Your Honors, number 3 in the list is Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon, Gerard A. Mosquera.
Good afternoon, Attorney Mosquera, Deputy Ombudsman. Please sit down. And so may I request Attorney Cayos to start the interview.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon, Deputy Ombudsman Mosquera.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
We interviewed you extensively when you applied for the position of Deputy Ombudsman.
Yes, ma'am.
In fact, you were shortlisted twice. And I recall distinctly that you had this passion to pursue graft and corruption.
Yes, ma'am.
And that is the reason why you applied for your current position.
Yes, ma'am.
You assumed on June 1st, 2012, and you would have until 2019.
Yes, ma'am.
Why have you decided to aspire for the Supreme Court? Not even midway or at least a little over midway your term as a Deputy Ombudsman.
Yes, ma'am. I have a career in the private sector, ma'am. And when I decided to join the public service, my only motivation was really to serve. And the question was also, I also considered the question. But in the Office of the Ombudsman, our main goal is really to address the problem of corruption. And I believe that I am ready to serve in another capacity, in a much broader capacity, pursuing the same principles of transparency, accountability, integrity, and the promotion of the rule of law. When I left the private sector in 2011, as the Honorable Attorney Cayos mentioned, I asked myself what would be the proper timing to serve in government. Actually, in the latter years of my life, after I have exhausted all possibilities in the private sector, or earlier, where I can offer the best years of my life to government service. I chose the latter, Your Honor, because I believe that when you aspire to serve the people, to serve the public, it should be to offer the best years of your life. And I believe that at present, I would consider myself to be in that stage. I am healthy. I fairly have the skills and the basic knowledge to serve in a different capacity, and I want to offer that in another area, in another field, particularly in the Supreme Court, rather than at a much later time. The second reason also, Your Honor, is opportunity. This will be the last appointment that the present president will make, and I believe that it is a good time to offer myself. The current president has created, the present administration has created an atmosphere or an environment where anyone can aspire for office as long as you have the integrity, the competence, and the commitment to serve in public office. So those two are my reasons. First one is I believe I want to offer the best years of my life to public service, including service in the Supreme Court. And secondly, there is a golden opportunity now to serve in the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Deputy Ombudsman. Now, let's go back, focus on the work that you currently do at the Office of the Ombudsman.
Yes, ma'am.
I recall that when we interviewed you, there was a problem as to the actual state of the caseload pending before the office, specifically for the Office of the Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon. And we even gathered information that records of the cases were hidden in the ceiling, in different places within the office, which made it difficult for you to determine what your actual caseload was really about. May we just know what steps have you taken to address this problem as regards the actual caseload, and what have you done, to address this problem?
In fact, the centerpiece program of the current administration, the Office of the Ombudsman, is the Zero Backlog program, which is to address the problem of a backlog. In fighting docket decongestion or fighting backlogs, Your Honor, there are three things that are important. Number one, you must have to reduce the intake to some extent. Number two, you have to attack aggressively the backlog. In other words, have a conscious, determined, and organized effort to really attack the backlog. And I use the word attack deliberately because it has to be like an aggressive attack. And thirdly, to ensure that the current cases do not add to the backlog. This, Your Honor, we were able to do in the Office of the Ombudsman. We were able to reduce the intake. Number two, we were able to attack successfully the backlog. And number three, we were able to ensure that the current cases, Your Honors, filed within the year do not add to the backlog but are actually reduced. Right now, Your Honor, when I assumed office in the Office of the Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon in 2012, the caseload of the office was standing at around between 7,500 to 8,000 cases. That would be about 50% of the total workload of the Office of the Ombudsman, handled by the Office of the Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon. So we're looking at around 15 to 16,000 total workload for the entire office. Through these efforts, the Zero Backlog Program, aggressively attacking the backlog, reducing the intake, and ensuring that the current cases do not add to the backlog. The latest figures that I have from our computer system, Your Honors, I'm happy to share with the Honorable Council that currently we now have the Office of the Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon only has a workload for 2015 of 3,000 cases. So from 7,500 to 8,000, it is now brought down to 3,067 cases, Your Honor. Our intake last year, 2015, was only 539 cases. And currently, Your Honor, our clearance rate, that would be the cases received for the year, cases resolved for the year over cases accepted or received in the docket, is way above 100%. That means that we're still going after our backlog successfully. This situation now, Your Honor, in 2016 will allow us to inject more quality into our decisions and will ensure that cases filed in court are successfully prosecuted to its conclusion. And it will augur well for the enhanced credibility of the Office of the Ombudsman, and definitely, Your Honors, create deterrence against corruption, which is really the mandate of the Office of the Ombudsman. So that I'm happy to share with the Honorable Council.
Thank you, Deputy Ombudsman. Some sectors, particularly some of the practitioners, have actually raised the concern that there are still cases, old cases, some of which are already close to reaching the period of prescription. How are you addressing it so that to ensure that these cases will not reach the period of prescription where it will be no longer feasible to prosecute against errant public servants?
In any zero backlog program, Your Honors, it is not advisable to just have or compel our lawyers to resolve cases. You have to have a concerted, determined effort and direct it towards the backlog. And that's exactly what we did in the Office of the Ombudsman, particularly in the Office of the Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon. In relation to that, Your Honors, when I assumed office in 2012 as Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon, Your Honors, the oldest case was 2001. This was 2012. So we have a backlog of 11 years, Your Honor. And this is exactly the situation that Your Honor is indicating. I'm happy to report to Your Honors, ma'am, that as of the last time I checked our zero backlog monitoring records, the earliest case that we have now is 2011. So we now have a backlog of only 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. We've brought it down from 11 years to 5 years. In 2 years' time, by the end of the term of the Honorable Ombudsman, we would have brought down our backlog to a period of between 2 to 3 years, Your Honor. That we see happening because the backlog program has already been institutionalized and it is running smoothly, monitored regularly, and the results are really forthcoming. So I can now promise you, Your Honors, that those old cases is going to be a thing of the past. But if I may just add, Your Honors, that there's also the so-called sins of the past. That there have been cases there when the Honorable Ombudsman came in that have been languishing for a long time. That is the cases that we now are having problems with the Sandiganbayan, because the period of time that it has been there languishing before the current group came in is something that we cannot undo. So we'll just have to exert utmost efforts with the Sandiganbayan and convince them that the delay is not the doing of the government, but there are extraneous and external factors. And I think the Honorable Attorney Cayosa referred to it earlier about people in the past hiding cases, and that would be one of the reasons why all these cases have been there languishing before the current group came in.
Would you consider your work as Deputy Ombudsman done?
Major reforms have been in place under the leadership of the Honorable Ombudsman. The work will never be... corruption is still around, and there will still be corruption in the future. So the work of fighting corruption is never done, Your Honor. But in my personal capacity, in my humble opinion, Your Honor, a lot of the reforms have already been instituted and are actually institutionalized.
Just one point, the warning light has already indicated that my time is up, but I need to bring this to your attention because we received a copy of your motion for early resolution in the regular administrative case filed against you, and I know that you are aware of the existing rule of the JBC that should there be a pending regular administrative case against you, then that would render you disqualified from being considered for nomination.
That's right.
So maybe it would help if this is resolved
Yes, Your Honor.
the earliest in your favor so that we may consider you.
Would Your Honor allow me to comment on the case, or?
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Your Honor. As with all judicial or quasi-judicial officers, there will always be disgruntled party litigants. This case that Your Honor referred to pertained to a letter filed by a 90-year-old lady lawyer regarding a complaint that a letter that he sent to me. The procedure in our office, based on Office Order 183, promulgated by the Honorable Ombudsman Justice Conchita Carpio Morales, mandates that all these complaints, all these letters are processed through an administrative system. It never gets to me, Your Honor. On average, the Office of the Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon only receives between 70 to 80 letters a day. If you translate it to a week, that would be around 400 a week. If you go on, that would be 1,800 a month and about 20,000 a year. It doesn't get to me, Your Honor, because there's an administrative process that handles it. But that letter has already been acted upon. It's been processed. Notice has already been sent to the complainant. But then we cannot stop the party from still filing the complaint. I've already filed as early as October my comment and my answer raising that defense, and I'm hoping and praying that the Honorable Third Division of the Supreme Court will resolve the matter, Your Honor, so that I'll be given a chance to be considered by the Honorable Council. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain it, Your Honor.
As I mentioned, my time is up, and I wish you well. Thank you, and good luck. Thank you,
Thank you so
Justice
much,
Gutierrez.
Attorney Cayosa. Thank you so much. May I now request Attorney Mejia to continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Deputy Ombudsman Mosquera.
Good afternoon, sir. Your Honor.
What has motivated you to pursue an advocacy against graft and corruption?
Your Honors, I really started my advocacy in 1999, about 16 years ago. I was president of our chapter of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, South Cotabato, and there was one particular really corrupt judge in our locality, and we have been receiving a lot of complaints about this particular judge. So I gathered my board at the time, and despite threats to our practice, we decided to investigate the matter. We found there's sufficient evidence to file a complaint against the RTC judge, and we filed it with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court acted immediately, within 3 days, in fact, issued the preventive suspension, and the judge was suspended, and then I eventually prosecuted the case before the Honorable Justice Jose Sabio, who was then designated by the Supreme Court to hear the matter. The RTC judge was dismissed from the service for corruption and was deprived of all retirement benefits. He was about to be convicted by the Sandiganbayan when he passed away, so there was really no conviction. I share that experience, Your Honor, because that was the starting point of my anti-corruption advocacy. I believe it can really be done. I believe that if parties come together, stakeholders come together, government, well-meaning public officials, the private sector, complainants, witnesses, decide to do something about corruption, even corruption in the judiciary, that something good will come out of it and that deterrence will be created. Since that time, 1999, I have continuously focused my efforts on developing my skills, my knowledge in the area of anti-corruption. This is the advocacy that I'll probably have for life, Your Honor.
You're now eyeing a seat in the Supreme Court. How would your anti-corruption advocacy influence
Yes, Your Honor.
or fit your judicial philosophy in your work as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court?
Well, the central foundation, Your Honor, of my advocacy is Article 13 of our Constitution, when it stated that public office is a public trust, public officials and employees must be at all times accountable to the people and serve them with utmost responsibility, integrity, loyalty, and efficiency, and then must lead modest lives. I believe, Your Honor, that in my judicial philosophy, this will be a controlling influence, particularly the concept of integrity, the concept of oneness, which is destroyed, ruptured by the concept of corruption. So my advocacy for integrity in the public service, but not only in the public service, but honesty in Philippine society in general, would heavily impact and influence how I would resolve cases if given a chance to sit in the Supreme Court. This is an area where I feel I would be more of an activist judge than in any other area, Your Honor, because I believe that this is something that not only our country needs, but this is something that even my family can benefit from, and that my children can enjoy a better country and a better place, Your Honor, where they will have more opportunities, Your Honor.
When you were interviewed in your application then for the ombudsman,
Yes, Your Honor.
actually, for the ombudsman position,
Yes, Your Honor.
I remember you presenting a 7-point program.
Yes, Your Honor.
That you would specifically take
Yes, Your Honor.
if and when you are appointed to that position.
Yes, Your Honor.
With respect to your application for the Supreme Court, what are the specific steps will you do regarding the clogged dockets
Yes, Your Honor.
and corruption among judges?
Thank you, Your Honor. These are the two areas where I think I believe I can contribute and give value if given the chance to serve in the Supreme Court. Number one, docket decongestion, and number two, promotion of integrity in the judicial service, Your Honor. If you remember, Your Honor, I submitted a 12-page, 8-point, 7-year plan, and one of the major components of that plan is a 3-pronged strategy against corruption, anchored on 3 things. Number 1, create deterrence. Number 2, prevent corruption. Number 2, educate the public. So in the area of promotion of integrity and prevention of corruption in the judicial service, I will still apply the same strategy. Number one, create deterrence. That's always the first prong and the first strategy, Your Honor. In other words, that would mean more aggressive enforcement of ethical standards in the judiciary, fast tracking of cases involving disciplinary cases against judges, and that's also where I started my advocacy, Your Honor, when I had a participation in investigation and prosecution of a trial court judge. And thirdly, secondly, Your Honor, prevention. There's a lot to be accomplished with the strategy of prevention, particularly in any setting, whether in the executive, the legislative, or the judiciary. In other words, the way to prevent corruption is to increase audits, monitoring, supervision. The introduction of electronic of automation in the courts would come a long way in terms of prevention of corruption. And then finally, Your Honor, education is still a major strategy in the promotion of ethics in the judiciary. Education not only of the judges, but education of the public, that they should be more demanding of their public officials, particularly of their judges. But more important, they should be vigilant. And even more important, they should muster the courage to really file those complaints and prosecute those cases to its conclusion. And that's the experience that I had in 1999, Your Honor. The only reason why the case against the trial court judge was successful was because there was a complainant and two of his children who stood as witnesses, who really pushed the case, who never let go of the case, and that's the reason why Supreme Court eventually had basis to terminate the judge. If I may share, Your Honors, recently I was in the province last week. I was informed that the lawyer who facilitated that bribe was recently disbarred by the Supreme Court. So now it's a case that has been fully closed. Both the lawyer and both the judge and the lawyer has been punished, and that I think will go a long way in creating deterrence against corruption in the judiciary. If I may just go to the second part of your question, Your Honor, regarding docket decongestion, I think our experience in the Office of the Ombudsman with the same issues, the same challenges, would also be applicable to the judiciary. So again, the three-prong formula that I earlier shared with the Honorable Counsel: reduce your intake, or at least manage the intake. Number two, attack your backlog vigorously. And three, ensure that your current cases do not add to the backlog will be actionable. And this is something that I will advocate for if given the chance to sit in the Supreme Court, Your Honor.
Thank you. That was my final question. Good luck.
Thank you, Your
Deputy
Honor.
Ombudsman Mosquera. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you again, Attorney Mejia and Men. May I request Attorney Guevara this time to continue?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon, D.O. Mosquera.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
This is the first time that I'm sitting in the Judicial and Bar Council, and I'm not sure whether you also submitted an application for the 6 openings at the Sandiganbayan, resulting from the creation of 2 new divisions. Did you ever submit an application?
I did not, Your Honor.
I am quite surprised that you did not think of submitting an application for any of the 6 openings in the Sandiganbayan, considering that you are presently with the Ombudsman, Office of the Ombudsman. Is there any reason for that?
I did think about it, Your Honor, but the office that I'm now involved in, the Ombudsman, the Office of the Ombudsman in Luzon, accounts for about approximately around 50% of the cases that are filed with the Sandiganbayan, and I was a bit concerned about the possible conflict of interest issues that might be raised, and I might make life difficult for my colleagues in the division that I'll be in, where I have to inhibit and then another justice brought in. So I kind of decided that that's not in my career path, Your Honor, please.
I understand. All right. Of course, you know very well that the Philippines is a state party to the UN Convention
Yes, Your Honor.
Against Corruption, or UNCAC. And I think we have certain undertakings
Yes.
with respect to our participation in the UNCAC.
Yes, Your Honor.
And I also understand that the Office of the Ombudsman is very much involved in the activities of the UNCAC insofar as the Philippine entity is concerned, the state. All right, so where are we insofar as our compliance with undertakings in the UNCAC are concerned?
Your Honor, please, if we compare the Philippines with other countries, we're way ahead in terms of compliance. In fact, as Your Honor is very much involved in this, but the record would show, Your Honor, that the Philippines was one of the first that volunteered to be reviewed as far as UNCAC compliance is concerned. A lot of our laws are already compliant with UNCAC provisions. And in fact, right now we are ready for the second review cycle. And in fact, in the last state conference of state parties in St. Petersburg, Russia, the Philippines manifested its willingness, its readiness to be subjected to the second round of review, way ahead of most other countries, Your Honor, please. So our level of implementation is really is good, and in fact, we're on a comparative scale as compared to other countries, we're way ahead. But having said that, Your Honor, there are still a lot of things that can be done in terms of legislation, in terms of rules, regulations, in terms of interventions that we can still do. In fact, if I may volunteer, Your Honor, if Your Honor will allow, one law that I think we should have in the Philippines is corporate criminal liability for corruption offenses that corporations actually facilitate, or when corporate officers turn a blind eye to their agents engaging in corruption activities. That is one requirement of UNCAC, that all state parties must comply with and pass a law on corporate criminal liability. I think that law, if we have it here in the Philippines, would go a long way to ensure that directors and officers of corporations cannot evade criminal liability if they allow, facilitate, and even tolerate their agents engaging in corrupt activities, Your Honor.
Well, it appears to me that the level of our compliance with the Philippine undertakings under the UNCAC is rather high under the present administration and under the leadership of the present ombudsman. So, do you think this can be sustained over a long period of time if there is a change in administration or leadership in the office of the ombudsman?
We have covered a lot of ground, Your Honor, and we can no longer we can no longer backtrack. So I think the momentum will carry us over into the next administration. So in answer to your question, Your Honor, yes, I am confident that this will be sustained.
All right, there's a question here fed from Twitter, and I'd like to ask you. And this is the question. In addition to the condonation doctrine, is there any other bad law, quote unquote, which should be abandoned by the Supreme Court?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you for that question, Your Honor. There is a Supreme Court decision entitled Marquez. We call it the Marquez ruling. The Supreme Court ruling basically says it interpreted a specific power in the Ombudsman Charter on the issuance of subpoena. The Ombudsman Charter authorizes the Ombudsman or her agents to issue a subpoena against bank records. A Supreme Court ruling was passed, I think, about 10 years ago. A division of the Supreme Court, basically interpreting that provision by limiting it to just that it can only be exercised once a case is filed in court. And that has caused a lot of difficulties for us in the Office of the Ombudsman. Because if a criminal case is already filed in court, then the Ombudsman has no need to issue a subpoena because the prosecution can ask the court for a subpoena. But the more problematic area there, Your Honor, is that before you can file a case in court, you have to have a strong case first, or at least probable cause to file the case. And the way to build a probable cause is for you to be able to access the bank records. So we need that power before the case is filed. But right now, because of that ruling, Your Honors, we cannot directly issue the subpoena to subpoena those bank records because of that ruling. So this is a ruling that has really hobbled the Office of the Ombudsman in the pursuit or investigation of corrupt activities, and in fact it has created an obstacle. So this is one case that I'm very passionate about, and I believe that this case, like the condemnation doctrine, should always also be abandoned, Your Honor. And it helps that it is a division case, Your Honors.
Thank you, Dio Gerard. A couple of questions more. You come across as a very gentle and kind person, to me at least. But I noticed that you keep 6 firearms.
Yes, Your Honor.
Based on the records in our possession. What is the reason for that? Is that a matter of hobby only, or is this for something else?
First of all, Your Honor, it's a hobby. It's a sport. I engage in the sport of practical shooting. So it's a hobby that I've had for some time. Secondly, Your Honor, I come from Mindanao. And in my younger years, Your Honor, we've had fairly troubled our area in General Santos City has been quite have seen troubled times, and it has been my father was a veteran of World War II, and my father have always taught us to use firearms and to defend our home and our family if there is a need to. So I grew up in that environment, Your Honor. But I can assure Your Honor that those arms or those firearms are purely for self-defense purposes.
That explains the M16 rifle.
Yes, Your Honor, but which I have, yes, Your Honor. It's in my record, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, in the records that I have before me, there is a report of a certain incident that happened at the Ateneo campus.
Yes, Your Honor.
And there was reference to some physical violence involved.
Yes, Your Honor.
Could you tell us what this was all about?
Yes, Your Honor. It was an unfortunate incident that I was involved in, and there was a situation, a scuffle erupted. But at the time, I was a new lawyer for just a couple of months. So there was a complaint filed. I defended myself. I filed my answers. I was accused together with about 5 or 6 others. And eventually the cases reached the Supreme Court, both the administrative aspect and the criminal aspect. And in both instances, the Supreme Court dismissed those cases, Your Honor. That incident happened, Your Honor, if I'm not mistaken, in 1993. In 1993, Your Honor. I was just a 2-month-old lawyer at the time, Your Honor. Please. I think that was in June. The results came out in May of 1993. So the matter has been closed since about 1996, Your Honor, please, if I'm not mistaken, by way of the Supreme Court rulings in both the administrative and the criminal aspect, Your Honor.
Thank you for the clarification, Dio Mosquera.
Thank you.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you so much, Attorney Guevara. And now, may I request Justice Lagman to continue.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Ombudsman Mosquera. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Justice. If I may, Madam Justice, Deputy Ombudsman only, Your Honor.
But you can Ombudsman. You're practically the Ombudsman for Luzon.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Now, I was reading your record and I noticed that your litigation experience, yes,
Your Honor,
was limited at the time when you were, I think, 19 years old. 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 19 in 1996 up to 2003 when you were a managing partner of the Mosquera, Dibuco, Alaba, and Ibato office.
Yes, Your Honor.
And do you think your litigation experience is sufficient enough for you to effectively perform the duties and responsibilities of an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court?
Yes, Your Honor, please. Actually, Your Honor, my litigation experience would come earlier. I started my law practice in 1993 when I joined the law firm of Villarasa and M. Angco in 1990. Actually, in 1992, before I passed the bar. And I continued after I passed the bar, Your Honor. So, and then I went back to General Santos City where I opened my own law practice until around 2001, 2002. And then there were periods where I went back to practice, Your Honor, and then I went overseas to work for an international agency. But then when I returned to the Philippines, Your Honor, and worked for a government agency, Presidential Commission on Good Government, I had the opportunity to head the litigation department of the PCGG. I was the commissioner in charge for litigation, so that was about a year and 8 months. And then I transferred to the office of the Ombudsman where I am supervising a prosecution unit, Your Honor, which would also involve a certain level of litigation, Your Honor. So that would be about 3 years to 8 months of experience also, Your Honor. So accumulated total of this, Your Honor, would be more than the years that I stated, Your Honor, because the years that I stated in my PDS, I did not include my ombudsman experience because it was my impression that the question only asked for litigation experience in the private sector or as a trial lawyer, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, okay, I will still call you Ombudsman Mosquera.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
How true is the rumor
Yes, Your
that
Honor.
one of the problems in the office of the Ombudsman is lack of good prosecutors?
That is true, Your Honor. That rumor is true.
What are you doing to address this problem?
A lot of things have been done, Your Honor, since the Honorable Ombudsman and this presentation took into office, Your Honor. We have launched a very aggressive recruitment program, Your Honor, to bring in bright, idealistic, and honest lawyers. However, Your Honor, there are challenges, Your Honor. Number one, the process is quite slow because we have to be very careful because the items that are available are permanent items, Your Honor.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, Your Honor. So we want to be very sure that not only are these lawyers bright, but they are honest. And to vet these lawyers takes some time, Your Honor. The second challenge, Your Honor, is we're also competing with other government agencies.
Like the DOJ.
The Office of the Solicitor General, Your Honor.
Yes.
The Securities and Exchange Commission.
Yeah.
The Office of the President. Even the Public Attorney's Office have better compensation packages than the Office of the Ombudsman, Your Honor. Some of the lawyers that you would like to recruit are in the Supreme Court as court attorneys and in the Court of Appeals. So it's a competitive market, Your Honor, and we have very limited, because of the current compensation structure in the Office of Ombudsman, we are really, our hands are tied when it comes to competition. Of course, we go out of our way. I've had the opportunity to recruit in the University of the Philippines and in Ateneo. I've delivered recruitment lectures there. We actually competed with Justice Ardilesa when he was recruiting for the OSG. But the first thing that young lawyers would always ask, Your Honor, and I'm sad to share this with the Honorable Council, is that first question that will be asked is, how much is your starting pay?
Yeah.
And that
A very important question.
yes, Your Honor. And
Okay. So, Your PDS shows that you have 4 children.
Yes, Your Honor.
And your wife is a dentist.
Yes, Your Honor.
I still remember when we first interviewed you that your wife was always with you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. How much do your family and social relationships shape your principles in life and career?
Your Honor, there are 2 things that shape my principles in my career.
Yes.
My faith
Yeah.
and my family. So my short answer, Your Honor, to your question is very much so. My family directly shapes how my career is run, how I view things, and how I will resolve cases, Your Honor, if given the chance to serve in the Supreme Court.
Okay. Independence is one of the attributes
Yes, ma'am.
required by the Constitution
Yes,
for
ma'am.
members of the judiciary.
Yes, ma'am.
Will you please tell us your thoughts on judicial independence?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, I'm a strong advocate of independence as a concept. In fact, Your Honor, in the Office of the Ombudsman, I am a strong advocate for an independent ombudsman. In the Constitution, the phraseology is very clear. Under the Article 8, Constitution states that there shall be created an independent ombudsman.
Okay.
So the term there was precisely placed to describe the nature of the office. That for the ombudsman to perform its functions, it has to be independent, free from any form of influence, particularly political influence, Your Honor. But if I may hasten to add, independence does not mean isolation. The Supreme Court will have to work with other stakeholders in the justice sector, and there are other pillars in the justice sector that the Supreme Court will have to work with. But in terms of influence in the way its decisions are being run, particularly political influence, I think the Supreme Court has to be clean and totally immune from these types of influence. And that is my concept, Your Honor, of independence. And our Constitution, Your Honor, has provided for a fairly extensive list of guarantees to ensure that the Supreme Court will be able to really protect its independence, Your Honor.
And how would you reconcile this perception of judicial independence with the Filipino mentality of utang na loob?
Yes, Your Honor.
Utang na loob to anybody
Yes, Your Honor.
who will help him in his appointment or to the appointing authority.
Yes, Your Honor.
How would you reconcile this perception of it?
Yes, Your Honor. In our outreach programs, Your Honor, in the Office of the Ombudsman, I have been asked the same question, maybe phrased in a slightly different way. If it's part of the culture of the Filipinos to be
Yes.
corrupt, because there are such things in our culture.
Utang na loob.
But my answer there, Your Honor, is there's a difference between culture with a big C and culture with a small c. Culture is what makes us beautiful and noble as a country. You know, our family values, our industry, our honesty, and so on and so forth, Your Honor. But culture with a big C is that there are certain habits in our communities, in our society, that would facilitate corruption. And among other things, Your Honor, it would be utang na loob,
Yes.
the patronage system.
Yeah, you are right.
For me, Your Honor, it really would require certain level of political, or in the case of the Supreme Court, judicial will to resist these types of influence, Your Honor. And in the Office of the Ombudsman, Your Honor, we have seen that it can be done. It can be done, Your Honor. In the Office of the Ombudsman, we have totally rejected the notion of gift giving. In the Office of the Ombudsman, we implement a strict gifts policy. All gifts from the outside are sent back, returned to sender, as we would call it.
Okay.
Any gifts amongst ourselves employees will be recorded in a gift registry as required by the rules.
Okay.
And nothing beyond 500 pesos. So wines like 550, 600 will have to be returned, Your Honor. And I'm sharing this, Your Honor, to communicate with the Honorable Council that it can be done despite these bad habits in our culture, with strong judicial will to resist such. It can be done, Your Honors, as it has been done in the Office of the Ombudsman under the leadership of our current Ombudsman and many other agencies right now in the government, Your Honor.
On that note, I have no more question, and I wish you luck.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You work on your case.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Because that might affect your chances for nomination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
No, ito pala isa. Ikaw na. Hindi ko pa tanong. Ikaw na nagtanong. Hindi ko na natanong yan.
Thank you so much, Justice Lagman. I have only a couple of questions. This is not my question, by the way. So the question sent to us is, what is your most significant accomplishment as Deputy Ombudsman?
Your Honor, I'm only an official of the Office of the Ombudsman. Whatever I share with the Council, I'm not claiming for myself, but attributing it to the entire office, and particularly our leader, the Ombudsman. But one of the major accomplishments that I think I have, I can think of right now, Your Honor, at the top of my head, is I have contributed to the restoration of public trust and confidence in the Office of the Ombudsman. Early in my term, Your Honor, as Deputy Ombudsman for Luzon, the Ombudsman designated me as Chairman of the Internal Affairs Board of the office. This is the internal disciplinary body of the Office of the Ombudsman. I have embraced this role, and together with my colleagues in the Internal Affairs Board, we have embarked on we may call it a cleansing process, where we aggressively investigated and prosecuted corrupt people from within our ranks, because there is nothing more ironic than corruption in an anti-corruption agency, and that we recognize from the very beginning, Your Honor. So I embraced that role as Chairman of the Internal Affairs Board, a position that I still hold today. And as a result of our work over the past 3.5 years, we have dismissed from the service 2 deputy ombudsmen, at least 2 assistant ombudsman, several directors, and many investigators and prosecutors. And in addition to dismissing them from the service, the office has filed cases against them for various corruption offenses, Your Honor, and these cases are now pending and are being aggressively prosecuted. This determined effort, Your Honor, to cleanse the ranks, in my humble opinion, contributed to building the current high level of credibility and trust that the office enjoys with the public, Your Honor. I am happy to share that I have, in my small way, contributed to that, Your Honor, please. That would be something that I consider one of my achievements, Your Honor, please.
This is my only question.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your forte is your experience in the Office of the Ombudsman.
Yes, Your Honor.
Did it not ever occur to you to apply with the Court of Appeals, because your experience there will prepare you more for the position of Associate Justice of the Supreme Court?
Yes. Your Honor, please. As I have shared earlier, Your Honor, to apply the Sandiganbayan, it has occurred to me, but applying in the
Not
Court
Sandiganbayan, Court of Appeals.
the Court of Appeals, Your Honor, I did not.
Saying that had you applied there
Yes, Your Honor.
before, with your experience there and your exposure in the Office of the Ombudsman, you will be a more effective Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. That's all.
Thank you, Your Honor, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to leave.